So, thing is, you may remember we was getting down. Well, we was kind of getting down. I was kind of down before we got there. But we we soldier on. Those meds were messing with me. The dread meds and the 28 hours without sleep in the hospital, as you remember from our previous episode. Well, we got down to the bottom of the first 25%, 400% size printout of this song list sheet. And at this point, we've got a decision to make, I guess, about whether we're going to go on to the next sheet where the column continues. The left-hand column being the one night or maybe column, and flotsam and jetsam first, and then we'll get to the difficult stuff that we aspire to. Or do we go off and hit the marginal notes? Well, there's stuff sideways in the margin, all the way down. So I'm going to assume that this stuff on the right hand part of the left hand margin is, the end of this column. We're going to continue down in a line, which means we get to a song by Tracy Schwartz, of all people. Now, Tracy Schwartz is not known as a songwriter. I don't know if he wrote many songs, but I think this is the only one I know of. But when he did write a song, he wrote the best song. And I learned this one actually out of a Sing Out magazine, which was kind of a throwback activity for me when I was, a young teenager in search of sources, folk music. I would often get stuff out of books. And that partially started, I could read the notes because I had, in fifth grade, had the opportunity to, join band. And that was, I wanted to play they gave us, we were supposed to choose an instrument, and I wanted to play the saxophone because that's a rock and roll instrument. And they were like, oh, well, that's not a real instrument. You take the clarinet first, you can shift over to your, raucous, flappy sort of stuff later on. Learn proper embouchure first, and I got stuck with the clarinet. But it did lead to me, being able to read and write and all that sort of thing. And they sent us to the music store to get a clarinet instruction manual. So that was pretty exciting. Went to Stanton Sheet Music downtown here, and here was a whole building full of music, written music. And I was particularly excited to discover that there were, in fact, Kingston Trio songbooks. And I managed to talk my parents into letting me to go home with one of those on top of the basic clarinet method. And I would try to read, there were a couple of songs in there that actually weren't on any of the records, and so I would try to read those, and I would try to read things I knew. But it lacked vividness and excitement, the whole reading thing. because the notes didn't mean a whole lot without the words and the voices. It just didn't have that resonance and excitement I was looking for. So I had to start playing guitar eventually. But I taught myself how to transfer that reading knowledge over to the guitar so I could pick out a tune. But it was really the words I was mostly interested in anyway. And some of the books didn't even really have much of a writing of the tunes. So, you had to lean into the whole idea of the oral transmission to get the feeling of the music. And I leaned into it more and more as time went on, and I was not reading so much in the 70s. But I went through a period where, once again, I was trying to absorb as much as I could, and I just happened to come across a then current sing out, which had been, a major thing for me nearly a decade earlier when I first discovered sing out in the basement of a library. It was like this whole other world down there in the basement of the Grandview Library with the hidden magical stuff that you couldn't find in any of the shopping centers. And believe me, I had been looking for years. I went to every record store in town and diligently studied the folk bin and the comedy bin. I knew every record in there and had read most of the liner notes, and I knew when something new showed up. And there was not a trace of these amazing Folkways records. And I looked at every magazine rack, in my 3 shopping center radius that I covered on my Schwinn bicycle day after day. And, once I had gone through the comic book rack, I would move over to the magazine rack because there were comic book related things and music magazines, which I would read all the little classified ad sized record reviews in the back of the Hi-Fi Stereo Review and Downbeat and whatever, looking for any mention of folk music. And they would mention it occasionally, usually with a bit of a snide attitude. But there was no sing out. Certainly no sing out. And the first sing out that I ever saw down there in the library of the basement had Gus Cannon's Jug Stompers on the cover, like that one picture of them that exists in this dark, grainy black and white window to another world. That was the mid-60s, early mid-60s, when folk music was opening up into all of the worlds. It was the blues, it was Johnny Cash, it was international music. And it was a little tiny magazine. It had been going on since I was born, pretty much, I think. It kind of followed up on the People's Songs, which had been started by, Pete Seeger and Lee Hayes around the time they wrote If I Had a Hammer. They would put out this little mimeographed magazine, the People's Songs, but they had gone off in 1950 unexpectedly to become big pop stars briefly. And so the torch was picked up by this guy, Erwin Silber, another staunch leftist and believer in tradition and oral transmission. And so by the time I got in on it and, that magical moment, when the other oddballs of my generation were likewise getting onto the whole jug band and New Lost City Ramblers world, It was a good decade and a half later, I don't know, over a decade later. And it wasn't long, some years after that, it became a full-sized magazine because there was this brief moment where it looked like, you know, this was going to turn into something nationwide because all the big rock stars at that time, they were all, hardcore folkies and sing-out fans. And we started having, flexidiscs with songs from the album, even bound into this large format sing-out, which was just marginally more accessible on, maybe one or two magazine stands here and there. It was an illusion. But besides, the ever more traditional stuff that was showing up in the magazines, we'd also, get us, like they'd throw in a Donovan song or a Beach Boys song. And one of the songs I learned out of that era of sing out, 1967-ish, was a song called Feel Like I'm Fixin' to Die Rag by this guy from the West Coast named Country Joe McDonald. And there were no Fish yet. The record wasn't out. So I was the first person in Ohio who knew about this song, probably. And sang it at a show in the high school during the summer talent show. Me and some of my friends that later morphed into the jug band. And we were grilled by a policeman before the show. He was asking whether we had any dirty words, And he said, well, this song has, he says, don't give a damn. And I said, well, why don't you just leave out the damn? Just go, I don't give a, it'll be funny. Yeah, but we forgot. We sang it anyway. And we escaped into the night before they could, grab us and lock us up for our transgressions or whatever. I wasn't even wearing my shoes. I was holding my shoes as I ran off across the lawn. Found out later that we placed second out of 3. We beat out the solo trombonist, but lost to the rock band. Anyway, that was earlier. Many years later, I got a copy of a 1970s sing out, and it had shrunk down a bit again. Not quite as small as the 50s and 60s version, but it was getting a little smaller. But it was full of wonderful stuff, and I learned this song out of it. Later got to hear it because it showed up on the record by its author and his cohorts in a group called the Strange Creek Singers. What a fine ensemble that was. I got to hear them live a couple of times at a couple of the far-flung folk festivals I managed to make it to in the 70s, in spite of the fact that I not only didn't have a car, I didn't even drive. And that group consisted of 2/3 of the New Lost City Ramblers, Mike and Tracy, and the 2 women's, Alice and Hazel, who also, functioned as a duo, are now considered, a big deal as the first women of bluegrass, kind of, but they were just another obscure act on Obscure Folkways Records. But the Strange Creek Singers record came out on the, big hit maker label Art Hooley. So I'm sure you've heard of that. Anyway, this song, and once again, I may have been the only one in Ohio doing this song. Me and Rick loved this song. It's a great song. And three decades and change later, somehow it showed up as the title track on Levon Helm's, may have been his last album, one of his last albums. He probably just remembered it from that sing out in the 70s, same as I did. I don't know. We'll see if I remember it. Now the poor old dirt farmer, he lost all his corn. And now where's the money to pay off his loan? The loan that he signed to pay off his corn, pay off his loan. Now the poor old dirt farmer, he lives all alone. His wife and kids left him and took all they owned. And on the next round, they took all they found. It was in their down. Now the poor old dirt farmer is dry as a bone, and the only thing growing is a 10-pound stone. And when it gets around, they roll it on down to the tax man in town. Now the poor old dirt farmer, I bet he does feel. Fell off his tractor, got stuck neath the wheel. Now his head's in the shape of a tread, but he still isn't dead. Now the poor old dirt farmer, I bet he does feel. Fell off his tractor, got stuck neath the wheel. Now his head's in the shape of a tread, but he still isn't dead. Now the poor old dirt farmer, he lost all his corn. And now where's the money to pay off his loan? Loan that he signed, pay off his corn, to pay off his loan, to pay off his corn, to pay off his loan, pay off his corn, pay off his loan. Poor old dirt farmer. Well, going back to the bedrock here again. Mississippi John Hurt was rediscovered right about the time I started taking guitar lessons from Roger Johnson, the proprietor, or one of the co-proprietor with his wife Carol, of the Columbus Folk Music Center, a little underground establishment, literally underground. It was halfway underground. had a window at street level, and you would go down underneath there, and there was all sorts of odd beatnik activity taking place. My parents had to drive me up there and drop me off and pick me up, somewhat to their distress. But I was pretty hot on the place. And they had the Sing Out magazines, not quite as many of them, and they also had Broadside. They had two different varieties of Broadside, the one from New York and the one from Boston. And they were all stacked up and mixed up, and you had to look at every one to see if there was one issue that was different than the others. And in the New York Broadside, there were brand new Bob Dylan songs illustrated by his girlfriend Susie. Ones that never showed up on the records, Now, at some point, his publisher said that Sing Out and Broadside couldn't publish his songs anymore, even though they had spread the word about his existence in the beginning. But he did write to Sis Cunningham at Broadside at one point. Later on, I think after, he had the accident and became a recluse, and he wrote to her and wrote her a letter and got published. It said, "I just want you to know, I am with you. I am with you." He didn't want to write topical songs and put them on his records anymore, but that didn't mean he wasn't with them. So anyway, I went there to take lessons, and as luck would have it, Roger had learned to play like Mississippi John Hurt, and he was passing it on to me. But this is one that I got off of the record once I finally got some records of the old 78 stuff. And this was one of his early recordings. And once again, I like to point out that just because a song is sung in the first person does not necessarily mean that it is autobiographical. I don't, everybody talked about what a sweet gentleman Mississippi John Hurt was, so I'm not sure if he was inclined to shoot and, slice people up willy-nilly just because of a romantic misunderstanding. But, let's sing about it anyway. There's the difference between fiction and reality. Jesus. I have to keep telling people this. Aside from that, it's a true story. Got the blues, can't be satisfied. Said I got the blues, can't be satisfied. If I keep the blues, I'll hop that freight and ride. They say the whiskey straight will drive the blues away. They say the whiskey straight will drive the blues away. Well, that being the case, I want to court today. Bought my baby a great big diamond ring. Bought my baby a great big diamond ring. I come right back home and I caught her shaking that thing. Well, I said, baby, what makes you act this way? I said, baby, what makes you act this way? Well, I won't admit it, this thing she gives away. I cut that joker so long, deep and wide. Cut that joker so long, deep and wide. Took my gun and I broke the barrel down. Well, I took my gun and I broke the barrel down. Well, I laid my baby 6 feet underground. Well, I cut that joker so long and deep and wide. Well, I cut that joker so long and deep and wide that I got the blues and I still ain't satisfied. Still ain't satisfied. Well, I know I don't know the words to this one. I don't know if I ever did. I think I meant to look them up. This is one of those gospel songs. Roger and Carol used to sing these songs. We used to have these big folk song club meetings in the Ohio Union. Took up 3 conference rooms, you know, opened them up and sat in a big circle, and everybody went around the circle and shared something. That all ended long before this, but a lot of this stuff, I'll meet you in the morning by the Bright River Fair and exchange the old cross for a crown. There'll be no disappointment. We'll have learned how to share when all the burdens lay down. I'll meet you in the morning, with a how do you do? And we'll sit down by the river, and in friendship old acquaintance renew. And you'll know me in the morning by the smile that I wear when I meet you in the morning. Meet you in the morning in the city that's built 4 square. You'll have to know me by my smile, 'cause I won't be wearing the body. And there's the Skip James song. Boy, I don't remember how I did this. I'm not sure whether he played this in standard tuning or in, slightly modified version of his open tuning, but I play it in E. Maybe he did too. I don't know what the hell Eric Clapton and Jack Bruce were thinking, but they made him. They gave him that hook. People could say Skip James, Cream did one of his songs, just like now they can say Tracy Schwartz. He wrote the title track on a Levon Helm album. I'm not putting down Levon. I love Levon, but people don't realize just how important those New Lost City Ramblers guys were to all of us. People like, Bob Dylan, you read his writings, his reminiscences. He was all about the New Lost City Ramblers when he got to New York after he had borrowed all those Folkways albums from Kerner Rand Glover, And Jerry Garcia, possibly the earliest tape of one of his bands sounds just like a New Lost City Ramblers record. And then the next band sounded just like a Jim Queskin and the Jug Band record. But anyway, I'm flashing back here. We're not getting back to the New Lost City Ramblers stuff for a while here. But I just wanted to point out that they put out 100 copies of their first record, Folkways did, and they sent at least half of them, just mailed them off to libraries. And that's how they brought back old time music into the public consciousness. Well, I am so glad, yes, I'm mighty glad, until I just don't know what to do. Well, I sing cuckoo-choo, just like a little baby do. I'd love to have a little loving kiss from you. And I'd make mighty glad, yes, I would be so glad, until I just wouldn't know what to do. Well, I'm so tired of weeping, I'm tired of mourning, I'm tired of mourning, tired of groaning for you. And I'm so glad, yes, I'm mighty glad, until I just don't know what to do. Well, I'm so glad, yeah, I'm so glad, until I just don't know what to do. I'm so tired of moaning, I'm tired of groaning, I'm tired of moaning, I'm tired of groaning for you. Well, Well, I sing cuckoo, cuckoo, just like a little baby do. I would love to have a little loving kiss from you. Then that would make me mighty glad. Yes, I would be so glad until I just wouldn't know what to do. I said I'm so glad. Yes, I'm mighty glad until I just know. Radical mood swings. Yeah, I'm glad. And this here song well known primarily because of the version as recorded by Charlie Poole. And then redone, much in the spirit of Charlie Poole, by the Holy Motor Rounders, the original two-man Holy Motor Rounders, Stamfel and Weber, who changed my life in such a mighty way that one afternoon when I was 15 or 16, came home with both of their first two records because I couldn't decide based on the liner notes which one I needed. So I ended up getting them both after sitting there in the record store month after month looking at them. Is this what I spend all my money on today? The record player had moved down to the rec room, the semi-buried basement at that point, because I was driving everybody crazy with it up in the living room. So I'm laying on the hide-a-bed, folded up, and put on my records on the old record changer, and immediately started coming down with an intense fever. And I listened to these records as my fever rose and my consciousness became more and more psychedelicized by pure virus. Anyway, this song was actually the follow-up to a song that we learned out of a book later, and to fuel our jug band repertoire, so we were not, copying the other jug bands, what they already had out on albums. I didn't realize the connection until some years later. I discovered that the song, What You Gonna Do When the Rent Comes Round, this song was in fact the follow-up, the sequel, by the same authors. Ragtime era. Disreputable stuff. This was stuff that was written by white people about, those people who were not good Victorians across town, but as budding hippies, we identified with the people from the other side of the tracks, I must have you know. And I'm not sure that the authors didn't too. I think there is a fair amount of envy and emulation involved along with whatever caricature is involved with this stuff. said this morning to me, give me your key, this place ain't free. I can't live knowing nothing you see. Pack up your clothes and skidoo. You, well, I've been waiting till my Bill comes home. He's my honey from the honeycomb. He said that he'd never leave me alone this morning, because it's moving day. Moving day. Rip the carpet up off the floor. Get all your overcoat, get out the door, because it's moving day. Pack up your clothes and get away. If you can't pay the rent, gotta live out in a tent, because it's moving day. Rent's been due since middle of May. What can I say? Going away. Pack gas my Ford up, do it today. Get on the road now, go slow. Well, just quick as we can, you can try and catch us, Mr. Landlord Man. We'll be headed back to Dixieland this morning, because it's moving day. Moving day. Rip the carpet up off the floor. Get on your overcoat, get out the door, because it's moving day. Pack up your... If you can't pay the rent, gotta live out in a tent, because it's moving day. I think it's possible. I decided at some point it wasn't, overcoat. It was a pack up your horoscope, get out the door. Reference to, fortune telling, which is a good way to make a living. It's an honest living, lying to people. That's what I say. And then it says Kassy Jones. Now, which Kassy Jones? There's a lot of Kassy Jones. In fact, even in Mississippi John Hurt's repertoire, there's at least two Kassy Jones. And of course, there's a very famous, popular Kassy Jones, which you can find my special version on YouTube. If you search my YouTube videos at Bleary Churl, there's a Comfest Suite from several years ago. And this was one of several popular, that Kassy Jones was one of several popular numbers that I did a video of. And I highly recommend those videos. I haven't broken them out as single videos yet. It's still a suite. And in that Kassy Jones, every stanza, in between choruses, we sped up 20% until we got back where we started. But this, I believe, is the one I did when I was, from the time I was a teenager, once again, Mississippi John Hurt, in the key of G. That part, this part too. Let me try that again. Kassy Jones was good engineer. Told the fireman not to fear. All we need is the water and the coal. Stick your head out the window, see the drivers rolling. I don't know. I can't remember it. Isn't that terrible? Kassy Jones said before he died, fix the road so the bums can ride. If they ride, let them ride the rise. Let them put their trust in the hand of God. Now Kassy Jones said before he died, one more road that I would like to ride. His conductor said, man, what can that be? Say the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. Now Kassy Jones said before he died, two more drinks that I would like to try. His conductor said, man, what can they be? He said, a glass of water and a cup of tea. Now just before he left, you could hear Kassy sing, come on, mama, and do that thing. I might not be back again if I don't get back today. How'd you say goodbye to your man before he passed away? Now early one morning, it began to rain. Round the curve come the mystery train. On the bumper was Hobo John. He's a good old rounder, but he's dead and gone.